Today we're going to be making a watercolor effect with wet on wet watercolor to create a really cool landscape that has a Northern Lights feel for the sky. The supplies that you're going to need are your paintbrushes, a pencil, a permanent marker, your watercolor paints, paper towel, a palette if you want to mix up colors, water in a water cup, and then if you want, you can even add some salt. Today I taped my watercolor paper to just a simple wooden board. Feel free to do that, or you can just leave your paper sit normally. The first thing that you can do is start to draw out the outline of either your mountain ranges or whatever you would like in the front of your picture. I'm going to do an easy, simple mountain range. I like to do this with a triangular motion, but I make my hand shake a little bit when I do the triangles, so it shouldn't be perfect. So I'm going to go up and kind of jiggle my hand a little bit, and then I'm going to bring my hand down to make the bottom of that mountain. Then I can go up and make some smaller mountains, all while making sure my hand is not perfectly straight. Once you have the mountain range the way that you like, you want to outline with a permanent marker. You want to make sure that this marker absolutely says permanent. If it does not say permanent marker, this may cause your mountains to bleed into your sky. Once this is outlined, I like to fill mine in. Now that my mountain range is filled in, I'm going to take my large brush, dip it in the water, and start to put it on the watercolor paint colors that I know I might want to use. I'm just dropping on a little bit of water and letting that soak into the colors. Now we're ready to start our wet on wet watercolor technique. So the first thing that you want to do is grab some water, and this can be with your big brush or whichever brush you're most comfortable with. Grab some water on your brush and start to soak the water into part of your sky. I'm only going to do about a third of my sky. I don't want to try to wet the entire paper because then I might try to rush myself, and I don't want to do that. Once the water has started to soak in, I'm going to pick out the colors that I want to put on this part of the sky. I'm going to start with some blue, and I'm just going to stroke that onto the paper and let that water do some of the work for me. So I'm doing more vertical and diagonal lines. You could do more squiggles if you wanted to add squiggles. And then in between my color choices, I'm going to wash my brush out and get a new color. And because we used a Sharpie, the mountains are not going to move. Maybe a little purple. Let's do some yellow at the top. And you can choose to do any colors that you like. I can even go back in, and if I want some deeper colors, I can go back in and put some darker blues. The goal for me is to not overblend. So once I have the colors in the general areas, I want to keep those colors there. I don't want to go whoosh, 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 and mix them all together. Now I can take a little bit of water and I can work on the opposite side. So I'm just wetting my paper, and then I can add in similar or different colors. Can do different shapes, like I did a V shape here. And just fill the paper with all the different colors that you would want to see in your sky. Then we're going to do the middle. Because these sides are both wet, when we add water to the inside, some of that color will start to pool into the center. Don't be nervous about that. Let that happen. And if there's too much water, I can take my brush and I can just soak up some of that extra water. Then I can add my last bits of color to the center. And the last thing that, if you wanted to, I'm going to take just a little pinch of salt and sprinkle it right onto some of the little puddles of water that I have. This will add a fun texture to your sky. Now we're going to let this dry. Once it's dry, we can carefully rub the salt off. While that one's drying, let's do a different one. Let's do some trees instead of a mountain range. Trees are very easy to draw. I like to start with the tree trunks, make them slightly different sizes. You can make them smaller or bigger, and you want to have them fill up the bottom of your page. Once you have the trunks drawn, you can start to outline them with Sharpie. And then you can start to do the branches. The branches can be done at a slight diagonal coming out from the tree trunk. They get a little wider as you get towards the bottom, and those diagonal lines stay the same angle the whole way down. You can overlap some, you can make some longer and some shorter. You can leave some space in between if it's an old scraggly pine tree that's lost some of its branches. You can even have some of them go up if you wanted to have some of those tree limbs go up. Just make sure that they're the same angle for the whole tree. Now that we have our trees drawn in, we can start filling in the sky with the watercolor paints that we want to do for our wet on wet technique. I fill in the background with just plain water. Now I can pick out the colors that I want to do. I'm going to do a smaller brush this time and try some more squiggly lines instead of just straight up. Then I can start from the opposite side with my water and start filling in with my colors there. Now I'm going to let both of these dry for a good amount of time, and then I can go in and I can take my tape off and give the final reveal. You can also go in with a hair dryer to make it dry a little bit faster. Now that my painting is complete and it's dry, I wanted to show you the really cool effects that the salt had on the watercolor paint. You can see where there are little starbursts, and then there are little textured places where the salt had dissolved into the water. If you have any extra salt left on your painting, you can just gently rub the salt and then put it into your water, or you can put it into the trash can. Just be careful to do this when your painting is fully dry. If you ever have trouble getting your tape off of your paper and it's starting to rip, pause, hair dry your tape so that it gets a little bit warm, and that should cause the tape to be able to peel up a whole lot easier. I hope you enjoyed learning about this type of watercolor technique, and I hope you get to try it out soon. Let me know how it goes, good luck, and have fun!